This is a tutorial on the option agreement, CAR Form OA, often used with lease option agreements, sometimes with wholesaling. It's a 3-page form. I'll go through it and I'll explain, and we'll get started. So we put the date we're drafting the form here, the city in which we're drafting this form. I just put the city the office is in. But wherever you're drafting the form, I put the optioner, the person offering the option, and I put Larry Landlord because in a lease option scenario, it's the landlord who's the optioner. And then for the option E, the person buying the option, I put Timmy Tenant. We put the city the property's in, the county the property's in, then we put the address down here of the property in question that relates to the option. Now, I check this box, real estate purchase agreement, and then I put the date of the purchase agreement. This is the date that's in the top left corner of the purchase agreement. Now, the whole idea of the option is that the optioner is giving the optionee the option to exercise this purchase agreement for a certain period of time. So there's a benefit. So in a lease option, it might be that the optionee is a tenant that wanted to buy the property but couldn't afford it, so instead will lease the property until they can afford it, and then they'll exercise the option. But they're going to the lease knowing that they have the option to buy it. Or in a wholesale scenario, you might have a wholesaler that goes out, writes offers on properties, gets them in escrow, and then calls up an investor and says, hey, I have a purchase agreement that was accepted. I'll sell you the option to purchase that or to stand in the place of the purchase agreement as the buyer for a fee, and you put that fee right here. So we have separate consideration for option. Now, if the optioner is granting the optionee an option for a certain dollar amount, you'd put that here. And this is where it's reflected. If it's a lease, you can check this box. And if it's both, you can put 1A and 1B. Now in a lease, let's jump to number 2. So we check lease. If this is a lease option and there's a lease agreement that you would draft, you put the date of the lease agreement. Now here's the thing. With a lease agreement, there's a couple ways to exchange value for the option. One is maybe the optioner or landlord charges a little bit more than market value for the lease because the optioner, the owner, they're tied up. They're obligated. They don't have the same freedom to sell the property to someone else or enjoy a gain in or a rise in market value of the property during the course of the lease because they know that this optionee, the tenant, can buy it at any time. So there must be value exchanged. For example, maybe the tenant might pay $5,000 to the landlord and then lease it after that because it's worth it for them to pay a fee to the landlord to have the option to purchase the property. Or the landlord might charge more or not. It's up to them. But this is basically where the lease is incorporated into this. Now, there must be an option period. How long does it last? If this is a lease option, you should put the entire term of the lease here. If you're just doing some investment arrangement where you're selling the option to an investor, again, you'll put a shorter time frame here, but there needs to be a start and end date. Now, if the option E or the person that bought the option, if they are going to exercise the option, they need to give written notice to the optioner, and I just put landlord's agent or real estate agent or whoever else is involved as an authorized recipient. So you'll want to just identify someone. So if this is a lease option and there is a landlord involved and there's a purchase agreement, you'll want to get the landlord's agent identified here. Non-exercise, this basically stipulates that if the optionee doesn't exercise the option, they're forfeiting whatever value was delivered. That value, again, could be the flat fee up here or could be the increased lease amount. But that's basically forfeited. And then we have here so if there's a default on it, just some standard verbiage here. If there's a default on an option. Disclosure. It says here that if there's a purchase agreement involved, that within 7 days of entering into this option to provide disclosures. That's good. I mean, the optionee really should be furnished disclosures on this property identified up here, so that they know what they're getting in on, because who wants to buy an option on something that you would have never purchased had you known something crazy in the disclosures? Both parties initial. And again, this is all standard verbiage here. This is not as important as what we talked about above. You can just read through it. And if so, optioning inspection, just check the applicable box here. And that's it for now. So I would just, if there's any other terms that weren't explicitly mentioned above, write them in here. But that's basically it. Now, this can get confusing. This form's a little bit more robust, just because I think options inherently, I've noticed that people get confused with them very easily. In this form, I think it just has too much verbiage on it. It should be whittled down and made as simple as possible. But I don't write the forms. So here we are. We're done. 3-page form. If you have questions, please leave a comment. Thank you.